So clumping them together, do you know what I mean? Like if you've been falsely accused and you're on the registry, it's like that's where we're all stuck. No, we don't. I don't think your average person wants an innocent person to be falsely accused and imprisoned, or I honestly don't.
Do you think a prosecutor or law enforcement can build enough evidence on somebody that's actually innocent of a crime for prosecution purposes?
Unfortunately, yeah. I know that's possible. I know that's possible.
So when the last time you filled out a job application or a home application?
I have been on Social Security, like disability,
Okay.
not SSI. I worked for a long time, but I went out of work, which I went out because my sister had just died.
Mm.
And I was working at a place, like I had to leave my son's father. I was working at a place where one of the managers was on the registry, and he had started to reoffend in this work environment. And so with the loss of my sister, bringing up my own stuff, this situation triggered my own issues. And so as much as I want people to move forward, I was glad, he's such a nice guy, and he's working, and he's doing well. When he started to reoffend, because the situation he lived in, his father was a vet. His father was like threatening to kill him, pulled a gun on him, and it set off that spiral. So do you understand how I'm grappling with this? I'm struggling. I'm struggling with it.
No, you all right. So, well, I had been asking you because I asked you, do you think people with criminal convictions, in a shorter question, should we be compassionate towards them when it comes to housing and employment? Meaning, just because you have a criminal conviction, should we look past the criminal convictions and house people and give people employment despite having a criminal record, since we all know the criminal justice system is not perfect, and on top of the criminal justice system not being perfect, we have mischievous people out here that actually put people in tough places and actually had them on their side. So, when I asked you about when the last time you filled out a job application or a home application, is because I was trying to reference to that box, that box you check that says, have you ever had a criminal conviction? And my next question was, do you think that box should be eliminated from housing and employment about asking people about criminal records?
Okay. I know what that, but like, I know that the SSD box, like, if you have a disability, have you ever had a disability? I know what that box means. And if I check it, I'm likely not going to get a call from an employer. Okay. With that one, because I have never had to check that I have had a prior.
Just thinking about everybody else, not you. Let's take it out.
Okay.
People with criminal records, and you and me already established, just because somebody has a criminal record don't necessarily mean that they deserve that criminal record. So now we're talking about compassion and being compassionate with people, not giving people a second chance to get their life together, because some people's life had already been together before they encountered the criminal justice system,
where they were actually the victim of the system.
Right. So now I'm asking you, I was asking you, should we get rid of that criminal history box, but I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next question, right? So, do you think the sex offender registry keep communities safer? And I know I'm asking a survivor this, so I want to know from a survivor. Does the sex offender registry actually create a safer community?
I think, honestly, just the fact that I think that just the fact that somebody did something about, like, when there was so many horrific, you know, cases, that the fact that somebody attempted to create a solution, okay, you're asking a survivor, it's coming from a survivor that has a child, okay? So I think it gave people some sort of a measure of false sense of security, that, because how many people really check the registry? Do you know what I mean? I mean, do people like once a month decide they're going to check the registry to see if a sex offender has moved into their neighborhood? I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? I really don't.
Okay, so you said, and I don't know when this time was, but you say a time when there was a horrific number of cases. Now, on a flip side, have you ever, or can you ever, or even imagine a time, even right now today, where there's a horrific number of women utilizing the law to push a narrative because they know the law will be on their side?
Probably. Because I understand that there's two sides to every coin. And the, what is it like? Would it be my unconscious bias? Do you know what I mean? Like, sure, I know. Like, it took me a very long time to come to terms with, Bill Cosby, everybody's dad, everybody coming up and out on, his offenses. And so when you say that to the reverse, like when you say that there's a person who's been, say, falsely accused in a situation like that.
Do you know who Yusuf is?
What?
Do you know who
You,
Yusuf? Yusuf? Yeah.
Yusuf?
Uh-huh.
No.
What about Brian Smith? Let me get, okay, so they two different places, but let me give you something different, right? You know about Central Park 5? You do know about Central Park 5? You think that was a once in a lifetime thing that happened there?
I get it. Now I get it. See, you're helping me put all these things together. You know, I'm, I am honestly, what you're doing is you're educating a person, okay, who really just thought it was that simple. Do you know what I mean? Like, honestly, when I first saw this, I was like, blah, 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 blah. because I'm not breaking it down. You know what I mean? Not, and most people are coming at it, with a higher level of emotionality. Do you know what I mean? So you have to break it down for them, like you were doing for me. And the more people you can do that with, I think the more people will get it.
Yeah, that's what I want. That's what I
Yeah.
wish. So, like I
See, now
asked
I
you,
get that now, because honestly, I just, I'm for, like, let's find a solution.
mhm.
But honestly, when you're in fear, you forget that to look at the bigger picture, because you're shutting down, you're closing down in fear, and there's all this else out there.
So, I asked you about the Me Too movement earlier, and I want to tell you, like, I am with Me Too. I am pro Me Too. I understand that when people do commit crimes and take something so sacred from people, it can create a dangerous trauma within, where people can't really understand except the person who actually experienced the, something that none of us want to go through.
Yeah.
But on that same, in that same token, right? Do you think that the sex offender registry also creates and causes trauma against those that's on the registry?
Well, absolutely. It's the difference between punishment, like a crucifixion in our society. Like if you were on the sex offender registry, um, like you have you have, you know, if that person is truly attempting to, um, and I guess, say if a person who's been falsely accused, falsely convicted is on the registry, they're still trying to move forward, even if they didn't, have this offense. And then the ones that actually did, it's the same stigma, right? So I totally get how hard it is to try to rebuild your life when it's almost like you're up on the cross. It's a crucifixion. You know what I mean? You're up there, you're beaten down by not being able to get a job, not being able to find a place to live, having all kinds of probation, probably, regulated, getting there, missing your job. People might have substance abuse too, and the stress is so great, and they end up relapsing in that vicious cycle. And as much as I understand that, this is what I struggle with. As much as I understand that, people that have, like, say, people that have been violated by somebody who was correctly accused and prosecuted experience the same, they experience the same deterioration, just because they have to come to terms with how that offense made them feel, right? They can be depressed. They know they don't believe in their ability, their value. They oftentimes only think their value is sexual, so they go into, sex trade, or they're too afraid to go out to work, honestly. So now what I'm trying to think through in my own mind and work through in my own mind is, what does the offender registry is not going to prevent an offender from reoffending. And who is it really alerting? Like, I'm sort of like sorting through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talked about violations of people who actually commit crimes, and I do, and I agree with you. And I also want to put out there, it's also a violation when parents purposely destroy another young person's life when they can't control their kid. And I also believe it's a violation when women lie about sexual assault or accusations. And it also creates a scenario and puts people in an environment to where they are afraid to hang out around certain people or be around people's kids. It also creates an environment that puts people in a place where they don't want to go over here and work or even enter this school, or because the situation is so embarrassing. Just the title and the topic of having this label, because of an accusation that is not right, it creates so much fear and anxiety within that a lot of people really don't understand. But let me go to the next one. We almost to the end now. But do you, so we've been talking about rehabilitation, right?
Yeah.
And as a survivor, how do you think, you kind of already answered this, but how do you think the sex offender registry rehabilitate? Like, how is it rehabilitative?
You know what? I think that and again, this is only for those that um, have actually committed the crime. And I think what we're trying to do is to create exposure and accountability. But with that, because of uh like somehow sexual offenses they're even sometimes they're looked at even worse than murder.
They are.
You know what I mean? It's like it's it's so strange, but I guess it's because it attacks the most private part of a person, you know. And so when a person has been falsely accused, unfortunately they've been.
So do you think we need to create exposure and accountability for situations like that?
I
If
think
so,
I
how do
think
you think we should do it?
I, yes, you know what? Because it works.
How
I
do you
think
think
that
we should do it?
I think that we need to hear people. Like I've been watching a lot of actual offenders, talk about their offenses and what they had to go through in order to return to themselves. And you could tell their sincerity. And I think there has to be a platform for people who have been falsely accused to really hear the details. That's the difference when when you have an opportunity for a number of people to share their stories. That's what gets to people.
So
Because
I'm
we can.
sorry, I'm confused just a little bit because we was talking about the registry and how is it rehabilitative, and you was pretty much stating that it's rehabilitative because it puts people who actually created certain crimes in a position to where it's exposure and it's putting them in a place of
I think that's
accountable,
right.
right?
I think that's what I think that there are two sides of that. Like that we were trying to create some sense of like somehow trying to rebuild a boundary of safety, but because it's already been damaged, um how would anybody, like how would we alert anybody? Okay, if a person's not going to be in jail or separated through, okay, how do you how do you it's almost like imposing accountability,
So it's
uh, exposure, and so I think the therapeutic need is for accountability. But I think that what we ended up doing is, you know, you very rarely like people like there's a healthy sense of shame that exists, but some people never learned that.
mm,
So I
well,
think
I
that
guess I'm trying to ask you something that I think you may not be understanding my question, because we get the exposure and the accountability of people on the registry that may have created certain crimes because you have people out there. Now I want to talk about women and parents that purposely destroy people's lives, or women who create scenarios that destroys people's lives once again. How do we create exposure and accountability for them?
okay. uh Now I think you're making a very good point about the registry is not the solution. Because when I think about, you know, in my mind and in my world, obviously that person that has made these false accusations is on the registry as well. But without the point is, without the conversation, without a human face, right? Without a human face of the actual person owning their offenses and the falsely accused explaining the situation in depth, without those human faces, it becomes, people are, obviously, it's, this is how, I would assume people in general are thinking, you know, sex offenses are wrong and who cares? Because we don't see the human faces. We don't see or hear the person who's been falsely accused. All we hear is that person's been falsely accused. We very rarely really hear their story of how it has affected their lives. You hear survivors talking about, how it has affected my life this way or that way, but you don't hear very often a person who's been falsely accused of a crime tell their story.
Because it's hard to talk about it. This
exactly
it's so scary to talk about because nobody want to accept things like this actually exist. So
right.
People bottle it up and keep it in because they feel they have nobody to talk to, because everybody want to demonize them or attack them in ways that, it's unjust.
Yeah.
So creating exposure and accountability for parents or people who create false scenarios, that's, I mean,
there's, what?
Ideas, but I mean, I really think it need to be like a same time, different crime rule, to where if you create a false narrative, then, and it's come to light, you actually need to be sentenced to prison. Is. But what happens when it's not a false accusation, just an angry parent? How do you expose and keep angry parents accountable for ruining somebody else's life because they couldn't control their kid?
Sorry if I'm being repetitive, but again, I think change always comes when people are willing to expose their own errors, and
you know how hard it is to say sorry. People go to their grave,
right,
try to cover their tracks up of something that they did that destroyed somebody else's life.
Well, that's because most of them have personality disorders and character disorders, and you see a lot of that in the family courts, because both parties are trying, they're warring with custody, and it becomes you see a lot of that. There could be some false accusation and some real accusation, but like I said, I think we cannot gloss over the details. I have, because I'm in recovery, I'm a survivor, but I'm also in recovery. And I was also saying, it was like, it seems like if you're a substance abuser, you get more support, and if you're, and I think that's the model. I think that recovery is a good model for any any problem that is this big on all sides. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's literally, I think, what you're doing, bringing a face to this. We have to keep doing that. And what was I thinking? The recovery model is based on acceptance, believing, like when we can say believing in a power greater than ourselves, but it's also believing in a different solution, believing that this is worth it. People's lives are at stake. And I think it happens, just like the Me Too movement, it caused this spiral of exposure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the people that are falsely accused, they're, what is it? There's a word for it, but they're, get pulled into it. Okay. But we have to persevere in when people can more clearly see the issues, they're going to feel more invested in solving, creating new solutions.
I hope that's the case. A lot of people was just with covering up a narrative, and keeping the criminal justice system operating in a certain way because it brings so much money to certain individuals, and other people get a chance to exploit that because they get benefits and perks from it. And people know it. But as a survivor, are you for or against the sex offender registry?
You know what? The truth is, this has made me rethink. It's made me rethink it. It's made me, the registry is not keeping people from re-offending.
What about people who never offended?
Right. And it's a double whammy for people who have been falsely accused and haven't offended.
And what about the people on there because angry parents? Like, it's just too much.
Right. So I guess my dog, what are you doing, Aiko? I think
not the people that's on the registry because people lied about their age. I'm just throwing different scenarios out.
No, I hear you, but what my treatment planner mind is looking at I'm looking at this system as if I'm walking in to a family, okay? And I'm trying to look at what's wrong with this picture. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what are the missing pieces in this situation. And so we have a system that's broken. We have boundaries that are broken. For, an offender is a victim of not having boundaries. Okay. And a victim is a victim of the offender not having boundaries. Someone who's falsely accused is the victim of somebody who does not respect somebody else's boundaries. Do you know what I mean? So, like, that's what I see as the common thing. And the only, I think we need to see people repairing that. One thing we don't get to see a lot is, we don't really hear very much from people who've been falsely accused.
It's a scary situation to talk about.
Right.
Believe
me. But I just, occurred to me, we don't. And you know what? We often don't hear, offenders truly remorseful. And it's, like what you're saying, it takes it takes a whole lot of healing for a survivor to like receive remorse from an offender, and it takes an awful lot for an offender to recognize what they've done.
See, and that's the thing, right? And I don't mean to cut you off, but we can focus on, you know, what and we call you calling them offenders, and you know the remorse and how they need to pretty much just like be accountable, right? But again, you know,
Right.
like where do we like when does these parents step up and be accountable for their actions? When do people who made up a scenario to get out of some trouble, you know, that destroyed
Right.
somebody's life, when do we start pushing and promoting? Like, because if we, again, like I'm with the Me Too movement, I'm all for it, right? But, and this is why I asked you what I asked you in the beginning, you know, because this is what I believe the Me Too movement has missed out on. They advocating only for one half. It's like if we don't advocate, let's advocate. You know, let's advocate for equity. Let's advocate for justice. Let's advocate for rights for everybody. If we don't advocate, let's advocate for the women who was actually raped. Let's also like don't leave out. We can't leave out these parents that's dealing with their own set of trauma that want to inflict pain on somebody else because they dealing with something. We can't leave out these kids that's mischievous, lying about their age, that's you know setting people up, you
Right.
know, for something that they're not prepared for, and we can't leave out the people who actually lie. So like my thing is, if we're gonna advocate, right? If we're gonna try to hold one side accountable, we got to hold everybody accountable.
I think that's exactly like, I think you're absolutely right. And what, like, and I find what as human beings we really need is we need to hear it from uh, another human being. And again, I'm saying that it's, and I know it takes courage, but every time, like when I think about, you know, in my own personal growth, when somebody had the self-acceptance and courage to share, you know, their story, then it gave somebody else courage, you know. And I don't, I'm trying to think of like if I've ever, like what I've ever been falsely accused of, if I've ever been falsely accused of anything, you know. And honestly, think about it. How many, maybe people, like, people don't, if you've been experienced something, people don't understand. Like, I'm honestly trying to think of somebody falsely accusing me of something, and I don't like, if they had, I think it would have made a big enough impression on me that I'd be able to remember it,
Mm.
you know. So it's a very unique experience, and it takes time to help people understand something that they have not. I might have empathy for people who've been falsely accused, right? I can, I'm willing to put myself in their situation to understand what it's like, but I don't get the details, you know? I need to hear those, you know what I mean? Your average person like me, we need to hear it. We need to know you as a person, do you know? So where is the platform for that?
You know, Paula, whenever you get a chance, I want you to go on the Pure Justice website, www.purejustice.org. Visit the Pure Justice store, and I want you to purchase my autobiography, Stolen Identity. Stolen Identity by RoShawn. That's on the Pure Justice website, purejustice.org, not com, but .org. I have one more question for you before we start wrapping up. But as a survivor, How do you think we can improve the sex offender registry?
I think that since the sex offender registry exists and it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon, that we should recognize that if there should be any effort, it should be in a system that works, meaning, you're supposed to register and people fall through the cracks all the time. The most important thing is, it's like trying to solve any problem. You have to define the problem, and every side's perspective needs space. It has to matter, and the number one thing I think that doesn't work about the registry is that it blocks those who are just trying to live, and those people are most likely not the ones that have actually murdered somebody. Those are not usually out of prison, and so it's not improving the human condition. It's not fair, really. And I don't know yet what the solution is. I'm working on it. but I definitely, my mind has been opened. You saw my comment was like I was cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, just being angry is a good thing, because it made me like want to tell my part. But the important thing is that it's the openness. We have to be open to how other people experience things. And like I said, I'll go and I'll buy your book and read that book. And yeah, it's important.
I thank you, Paula. Thank you all for watching. My name is RoShawn. Go ahead and click the subscribe button if you had not yet. And just like I asked Paula, go ahead and check that website out. That's www.purejustice.org. That's purejustice.org. Go ahead, visit the Pure Justice online store. Get you a copy of my autobiography, Stolen Identity. And until next time, see you soon.